The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight. It was the kind of rain that made you want to stay inside with a warm blanket and hot tea. But Dr. Yoon Yo-ho was still working in his small veterinary clinic on the edge of town. He was stitching up a cut on a farmer's dog when the power flickered. The old building groaned against the wind. Yeho looked up at the ceiling and sighed. This clinic had been his father's before him. The walls were old, the equipment was basic, but it was home. The dog whimpered softly. Yeho stroked its head with gentle hands. "Almost done, buddy. You're being so brave." He was 32 years old and had spent most of his adult life in this small town. His friends from university had moved to Seoul. They worked in fancy animal hospitals with modern equipment and wealthy clients. They made good money and lived exciting lives, but Yeho had chosen differently. After his father passed away 5 years ago, he took over the family clinic. He treated farm animals mostly: cows, pigs, chickens, and the occasional pet dog or cat. The work was simple. The pay was modest, but he found peace in it. His mother called him every Sunday. She always asked the same question: "When will you find a nice girl and settle down?" He always gave the same answer: "Soon, Mom, soon." But the truth was, he had stopped looking. He was comfortable in his loneliness. Or at least, that's what he told himself. He finished the stitches and gave the dog a gentle pat. The farmer thanked him and paid in cash. Yeho walked them to the door and watched them disappear into the rain. Then he began cleaning up for the night. That's when he heard something. A soft thud from the back of the building. Yeho paused. Could be a stray animal seeking shelter from the storm. It happened sometimes. He grabbed a flashlight and walked toward the back entrance. The rain was louder here. Water leaked through a crack in the roof, forming a small puddle on the floor. He made a mental note to fix it tomorrow. He opened the back door slowly. Lightning flashed across the sky. And in that brief moment of light, he saw her. A woman lay crumpled on the ground just outside his door. Her skin was impossibly pale, almost white like fresh snow. Her hair was silver, long and tangled with mud and leaves. She wore a torn dress that looked expensive despite the damage. But what shocked him most were her wounds. Deep gashes across her arms and stomach. The blood that seeped from them was dark, almost black. And strangest of all, the wounds seemed to smoke slightly in the rain, as if the water itself was hurting her. Yeho's training kicked in immediately. He didn't think about how strange this was. He didn't question why a woman who looked like she stepped out of a fairy tale was dying at his back door. He simply acted. He lifted her carefully. She weighed almost nothing, like a bird with hollow bones. He carried her inside and laid her on his examination table. The table was meant for animals, but it would have to do. Her breathing was shallow. Her heartbeat was faint and irregular. He cleaned her wounds with steady hands, though his mind raced with questions. The cuts were deep but clean, like they had been made with extremely sharp blades. The black blood worried him. He had never seen anything like it. He worked through the night. He stitched what he could. He applied medicines meant for animals because he had nothing else. He monitored her vital signs with equipment designed for dogs and cats. It wasn't ideal, but it was all he had thought. By morning, she was stable. Still unconscious, but breathing easier. Yeho sat in a chair beside her, exhausted but unable to sleep. Who was this woman? What had happened to her? He studied her face in the gray morning light. She was beautiful in a way that felt almost unreal. Her features were sharp and elegant. Even covered in wounds and mud, she looked like royalty. 2 days passed. Yeho kept his clinic closed and stayed by her side. He changed her bandages, fed her water through a small tube, and talked to her even though she couldn't hear him. It was something he did with animals in his care. He believed that hearing a kind voice helped them heal. On the third night, She opened her eyes. Yeho was dozing in his chair when he felt her gaze on him. He looked up and found himself staring into eyes that were deep red, like rubies catching firelight. They were the most beautiful and terrifying eyes he had ever seen. "Where am I?" Her voice was weak but clear. It carried an accent he couldn't place. "My veterinary clinic," he said softly. "I found you outside 3 days ago. You were badly hurt." She tried to sit up and winced in pain. Yeho gently pushed her back down. "Don't move. Your wounds are still healing." She looked at him with confusion. "You saved me? A human saved me?" Yeho didn't understand the question. "I'm a doctor." "Well, an animal doctor. But I couldn't just leave you there." Something flickered in her red eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or disbelief. "Do you know what I am?" she asked quietly. Yeho hesitated. He had spent 3 days wondering exactly that. The pale skin, the red eyes, the black blood, the wounds that smoked in rain. He wasn't stupid. He had read stories, watched movies. "I have some guesses," he admitted. "But it doesn't matter. You needed help." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke the words that would change his life forever. "My name is Serafina. I am a vampire, 4th princess of House Ashford, and I was exiled by my own family for refusing to kill innocent humans in a sacred ritual." Yeho's heart pounded. Every logical part of his brain screamed that this was impossible. Vampires weren't real. They were myths, stories told to scare children, but the evidence was right in front of him. The impossible beauty, the red eyes, the black blood, the wounds that defied medical explanation. "Your own family did this to you?" he asked Dot. She nodded slowly. "They poisoned me with a rare toxin. It stops our healing abilities. They wanted me to die slowly and painfully as punishment for my betrayal. But you didn't betray anyone. You refused to kill innocents." A sad smile crossed her lips. "In my world, mercy is weakness, and weakness is treason." Yeho sat back in his chair. His quiet life as a small-town vet had just become very complicated. He had saved a vampire princess, a princess whose enemies would surely come looking for her. Serafina seemed to read his thoughts. "I owe you my life," she said. "That is a debt my kind takes very seriously. I will repay you." She paused, her red eyes meeting his. "But I must warn you, my enemies will find me eventually. And when they do, anyone near me will be in danger." Yeho looked at this strange, wounded creature. He thought about his quiet life, his empty clinic, his Sunday calls from his mother asking when he would find someone. "Let's worry about getting you healthy first," he said simply. "We can figure out the rest later." For the first time since she opened her eyes, Serafina looked genuinely surprised. This human wasn't running away. He wasn't demanding explanations or panicking about vampires being real. He was just offering help. She didn't understand him at all. But somewhere deep inside her cold heart, something warm flickered to life. The weeks that followed were strange for both of them. Yeho had never shared his space with anyone since his father died. And Serafina had never lived among humans as an equal. She recovered slowly. Much slower than she should have, she explained. The poison her family used was designed to cripple vampires for months. Without Yeho's treatment, she would have died within days. "How did you even save me?" she asked one morning. She was sitting up now, wrapped in a blanket Yeho had brought from his home. "Our kind doesn't respond to human medicine." Yeho scratched his head, embarrassed. "Honestly, I treated you the same way I treat sick animals. I gave you fluids. I cleaned your wounds with antibiotics. I used a compound I normally give to horses when they have blood infections." Serafina stared at him. "You gave me horse medicine? It worked, didn't it?" She laughed for the first time. It was a strange sound, rusty and unused, like she hadn't laughed in many years. But it made her look almost human. As the days passed, she told him about her world. Vampire society was ancient and complicated. They lived in the shadows of human civilization, ruling through bloodlines and political power. The strongest families controlled territories across the world. Her family, House Ashford, was one of the oldest. "We don't drink human blood to survive," she explained. "That's mostly a myth. We need it for power and for rituals. The older and purer a vampire, the less they actually need. I can go months without feeding." Yeho listened quietly. He asked questions when he was confused but never judged. This seemed to surprise Serafina constantly. "Why don't you fear me?" she asked one evening. "I could kill you easily. Even in my weakened state, I'm stronger and faster than any human." Yeho considered the question carefully. "I've spent my life around animals. Some of them could kill me too. A frightened horse, an angry bull. But I learned that most creatures don't want to hurt anyone. They only attack when they're scared or threatened." He looked at her directly. "You're not scared of me, are you?" Serafina opened her mouth to say something proud and dismissive. But the words wouldn't come, because the truth was, she wasn't threatening him because she didn't want to. And she didn't understand why. She changed the subject by telling him about her exile. The ritual she refused was called the Crimson Binding. It required sacrificing 7 innocent humans to strengthen the family's power for another century. Every noble house performed it. "I was chosen to lead the ritual this time," she said quietly. "It was supposed to be an honor. But when I saw the humans they had captured, they were just ordinary people. A teacher, a farmer, a young mother." Her hands clenched in her lap. "I couldn't do it. I released them and helped them escape. My siblings found out within hours. What happened then? They held a family trial. My brothers and sisters voted for my execution. They said I had weakened our house, endangered our future." Her voice grew bitter. "Only my mother showed mercy. She chose exile instead of death. But my brother Aldrich poisoned me anyway. He wanted to make sure I died slowly, far from home, with no one to help me." Yeho felt anger rise in his chest. "Your own brother did this? In my world, family means something different than in yours. Loyalty is to the bloodline, not to individuals. I broke that loyalty when I showed mercy to humans." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the autumn wind shook the trees. "I'm glad you did it," Yeho finally said. "Those people are alive because of you. That matters." Serafina looked at him strangely. In 300 years, no one had ever told her that her choice mattered. Her family had called her weak. Her kind had called her a traitor. But this simple human veterinarian looked at her like she had done something good. As her strength returned, she began offering to repay her debt. Vampires took life debt seriously. It was part of their ancient code. "I can give you wealth," she said. "I have access to accounts that contain more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes." Yeho shook his head. "I don't need much money. My clinic pays the bills. That's enough. Then immortality. I can turn you. You would live forever, never age, never grow sick." "Living forever sounds lonely," he said. "Everyone I love would die while I stayed the same. No, thank you. Power then. Political connections. There are humans who serve vampire houses in exchange for influence. I could make you powerful." Yeho smiled sadly. "I don't want power. I just want to keep helping animals and maybe have a family someday. Normal things." Serafina fell silent. She had offered him everything her world valued: wealth, immortality, power. And he had refused all of it. She had nothing left to give. or so she thought. The idea came to her late one night. She was watching Yeho sleep in his chair beside her bed. He had refused to leave her alone since she woke up. Every night, he sat there keeping watch, ready to help if she needed anything. No one had ever watched over her like this. Not her servants, who were paid to care. Not her family, who saw her as a political piece on a board. This man protected her simply because he wanted to. When he woke the next morning, she made her offer. "I cannot be a good wife," she said carefully. "I don't know how humans love. I was never taught emotions or partnership or any of the things you probably expect from marriage." Yeho blinked, confused about where this was going. "But I can give you children," she continued. "Strong children with vampire blood in their veins. They would be healthy, powerful, and they would carry your family name forward. Let me repay you this way." The silence that followed was heavy. Yeho stared at her for a long moment. "Serafina," he said gently, "that's not how life works. Children aren't payment for a debt. They're not transactions. They need love, care, attention. They need parents who want them for themselves, not because of a bargain." "But I don't know any other way," she whispered. "This is all I have to offer." "That's not true." He moved closer and sat on the edge of her bed. "You have yourself. Your time. Your presence. You can learn to cook terrible food with me. You can help me clean animal cages. You can tell me stories about your 300 years of life. Those things matter more than children or money or power." Serafina felt tears burn behind her eyes. She hadn't cried in over a century. Vampires considered tears a weakness. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked. Jeho smiled. "Because you needed kindness. And because kindness doesn't need a reason." He stood up and walked toward the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow I need to visit a farm outside town. If you're feeling strong enough, you could come with me. See what I actually do every day." He left her alone with her thoughts. Serafina lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She had lived for 300 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had attended balls and grand palaces and witnessed wars that changed the world. But she had never met anyone like Jeho. And for the first time in her immortal life, she wanted to stay somewhere not because she had to, but because she chose to. Winter came early that year. The trees lost their leaves and the fields turned brown. Farmers worried about their animals in the cold. And Jeho was busier than ever. Serafina had stayed. She told herself it was because she hadn't fully healed yet. She told herself it was because she had nowhere else to go. But deep down, she knew those were just excuses. She stayed because she wanted to. At first, she just watched. She sat in the corner of the clinic while Jeho treated sick animals. She observed how he talked to frightened creatures with a soft voice, how he moved slowly so he wouldn't scare them, how he celebrated when a treatment worked and mourned when it didn't. Single quotes T. One day, a farmer brought in a lamb that wouldn't eat. The tiny creature was weak and trembling. Jeho examined it carefully. "Sometimes they give up," he explained to Serafina. "When they lose their mother or get separated from the flock, they stop wanting to live. What do you do then? You show them they're not alone." He wrapped the lamb in a warm blanket and held it against his chest. He hummed a gentle tune and stroked its head. For hours, he sat there doing nothing but offering comfort. Serafina watched with fascination. In her world, the weak were left to die. Strength was everything. This was the opposite of everything she had been taught. By evening, the lamb started eating again. The farmer came back the next day with tears in his eyes, thanking Jeho over and over. After he left, Serafina asked, "Why did you spend so much time on one small lamb? It can't be worth much money." Jeho looked at her with surprise. It wasn't about money. That lamb wanted to live. It just needed someone to remind it how. "But it's just an animal. All life has value, Serafina. Every creature on this earth wants to live, wants to feel safe, wants to matter to someone. He smiled gently. Even vampires, I think. She had no response to that dot. As the weeks passed, she began helping around the clinic. Small things at first. Cleaning equipment, organizing supplies, answering the phone when Yeho was busy. The townspeople started getting used to seeing her. They thought she was a distant relative visiting from abroad. Yeho introduced her as his cousin from overseas. It explained her unusual appearance and strange accent. The story worked well enough. People in small towns were curious, but also respectful of privacy. One evening, she decided to cook dinner. She had watched Yeho make simple meals and thought it couldn't be that difficult. She was 300 years old. She had mastered sword fighting, politics, and ancient languages. Cooking rice should be easy. The rice burned. The vegetables were either raw or completely overcooked. The soup tasted like salt water. Jeho came home to find her standing in the kitchen, surrounded by smoke, looking more defeated than when he had found her bleeding in the rain. He didn't laugh at her. He didn't criticize. He simply opened the windows to clear the smoke and said, "Let me show you how." They cooked together that night. He taught her how to wash rice properly, how to cut vegetables evenly, how to season soup with patience, rather than dumping in all the salt at once. Their dinner was simple but edible. They ate it together at his small kitchen table. "In my world," Serafina said quietly, "food is prepared by servants. I never needed to learn anything like this." "Did you enjoy learning?" She thought about it. The frustration of failing. The satisfaction of finally getting something right. The warmth of sharing a meal she had helped prepare. "Yes," she admitted. "I did." Yeho smiled. "Then that's what matters." She started joining him on farm visits. The farmers were suspicious at first. This strange pale woman with silver hair didn't look like she belonged in muddy fields and dirty barns. But they saw how carefully she watched Yeho work, how she handed him tools before he asked, how she genuinely seemed to care about their animals. One bitter cold morning, a farmer's horse went into difficult labor. Yeho worked for hours trying to help. Serafina stood beside him, her vampire strength suddenly useful as she helped position the struggling Mari. When the foal finally arrived, wet and wobbly but alive, the farmer actually hugged Serafina. She stood stiff and confused, not knowing what to do. She had never been hugged before. Later, in the truck driving home, Yao noticed she was quiet. "You okay?" "That man touched me," she said, still processing. "He embraced me like I was his family. He was grateful. His horse means everything to him. You helped save her, but he doesn't know what I am. If he knew, he would run away screaming." Yeho shook his head. "I don't think so. I think he would thank you just the same. You're not what you are, Serafina. You are what you do. And today, you did something good." She stared out the window at the snowy fields passing by. Something was changing inside her. The cold armor she had built around her heart for 300 years was starting to crack. One evening, Yeho came home to find her crying over a nature documentary. A mother elephant had died, leaving her baby alone. Serafina couldn't understand why she was crying. She had seen death countless times. She had caused death herself. Why did this affect her so much? Yeho sat beside her and handed her tissues. "It's called empathy," he said gently. "You're feeling what that baby elephant feels, alone, scared, missing someone who loved them." "I don't want to feel this way," she whispered. "It hurts." "I know. But feeling things, even painful things, means you're alive. Really alive. Not just existing." She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "How do you handle it? Caring about things that can hurt you? You don't handle it. You accept it. The pain is the price of love. And love is worth the price. That night, Serafina lay awake thinking about his words. For 300 years, she had protected herself by not caring. Not about humans, not about her family, not about anything except survival. But now she cared. She cared about the animals in the clinic. She cared about the farmers who trusted Yeho with their livelihoods. She cared about the small life she was building in this tiny town. And she cared about him. More than she wanted to admit. More than she knew how to express. She was learning to be human. And it was terrifying. But for the first time in her immortal life, she didn't want to run away from it. The peace couldn't last forever. Serafina knew this. She had been waiting for the other shoe to drop since the day she arrived. And one cold winter night, it finally did. It started with the barn fire. Jeho got the call around midnight. Old Farmer Park's barn was burning. By the time they arrived, the structure was completely engulfed in flames. Firefighters worked desperately to control the blaze while Park stood in the snow, watching his life's work turn to ash. 3 horses died in the fire. Several chickens and pigs were badly burned. Yeho worked until dawn treating the survivors, his hands steady even as his heart broke. But Serafina noticed something the others missed. The fire hadn't started naturally. There was a chemical smell beneath the smoke. A smell she recognized from her old world. This was deliberate. She told Yeho quietly as they drove home at sunrise. Someone set this fire. Why would anyone burn down an old farmer's barn? Seraphine's jaw tightened. To send a message. To me. 2 days later, another farm was attacked. This time, it was cattle. Someone had poisoned the water trough. 6 cows died before the farmer even realized something was wrong. Yeho spent the day doing autopsies, trying to figure out what poison had been used. Serafina already knew. It was a compound vampires used to kill livestock in enemy territories. A calling card. "They found me," she said that evening. Her voice was flat, empty. "My brother's hunters. They're here." Yeho looked up from his notes. "How do you know?" "The poison. The fire. These are vampire hunting tactics. They're not trying to kill me directly. They're trying to draw me out. Make me show myself. Then we call the police. Report everything." Serafina shook her head. "Human authorities can't help with this. These hunters are trained killers. They've been hunting vampires for centuries. If we involve police, innocent people will die." She stood up and walked toward the window. The snow was falling again, soft and silent. "I should leave," she said quietly. "If I go, they'll follow me. Your town will be safe again." "No." She turned around, surprised by the firmness in his voice. "You're not leaving," Yeho said. "Not like this. Not alone. You don't understand. These hunters will kill anyone who stands between them and me. You're just a human. You can't fight them. Then teach me what I can do. I'm not letting you face this alone." Serafina stared at him. In 300 years, no one had ever offered to stand beside her against danger. Not her siblings. Not her servants. Not even the guards sworn to protect her. Everyone in her life had always put themselves first. But this man, this simple veterinarian with gentle hands and a soft heart, was willing to fight for her. "You're insane," she whispered. "Probably," he agreed. "But I'm also stubborn. So either teach me how to help, or watch me stumble around getting in your way. Your choice." Despite everything, she almost smiled. They prepared together. Serafina taught him about vampire hunters. They were humans who served vampire houses in exchange for power and wealth. Her brother Aldrich had many such servants. These 3 had been tracking her for weeks. "They'll attack at night," she explained. "Hunters prefer darkness. They think it gives them an advantage against vampires. They don't know that I can see in the dark better than they can. What are their weaknesses? Arrogance. They've killed many vampires over the centuries. They think they're invincible. They won't expect resistance from a sick exile and a veterinarian. She taught him how to move quietly, how to watch for shadows that moved wrong, how to aim for vulnerable points when fighting someone stronger. In return, Yaho showed her his clinic's inventory. Animal sedatives, tranquilizers strong enough to drop a horse, chemicals that could blind or disorient if thrown correctly. I can't kill, Yaho said firmly. Even if they're trying to kill us, I won't take a life. Serafina should have argued. In her world, mercy got you killed. But she remembered the lamb he had saved with nothing but patience, the horse he had helped deliver, the countless animals he had healed with gentle hands. We'll do it your way, she said. No killing. The hunters came 3 nights later. Serafina heard them first. 3 heartbeats approaching the clinic from different directions, professional, coordinated. They had done this many times before. She woke Yeho with a touch. He rose silently, already reaching for the bag of supplies they had prepared. The first hunter came through the back door. Serafina was waiting. Even weakened, she was faster than any human. She caught his arm before he could raise his weapon and threw him across the room. The second hunter burst through a window. Yeho was ready. He threw a container of chemical compound directly at the hunter's face. The man screamed, temporarily blinded, clawing at his burning eyes. The third hunter was smarter. She hung back, watching her colleagues fall, calculating her next move. She was older than the others, more experienced. Princess Serafina, she called out. Your brother sends his regards. He wants you to know that your death will be slow. He's waited months for this. Serafina stepped into view. Then he'll have to wait longer. They fought. The hunter was skilled, wielding silver blades that could wound even weakened vampires. Serafina was faster, but tired quickly. The poison's effects hadn't fully worn off. Yeho saw her struggling. Without thinking, he charged at the hunter from behind, injecting her with a horse tranquilizer before she could react. The hunter stumbled, her movements becoming sluggish. Serafina finished the fight with a precise strike that knocked her unconscious. The first hunter was trying to rise. Yeho sedated him too. The second was still writhing on the ground, blinded and helpless. Within minutes, all 3 hunters were unconscious and restrained. Serafina stood over them, breathing hard. Her instincts screamed at her to kill them, to end the threat permanently. It was what she had been trained to do, what her family would expect. But she looked at Yaios. He stood among the chaos with kind eyes and steady hands. He had just fought for his life against trained killers, and he still refused to take a life. What do we do with them? She asked. We tie them up. In the morning, I'll call some contacts. There are people who deal with situations like this. People who can make sure they never hurt anyone again without killing them. That's risky. They might escape. They might come back. Maybe, but killing them would make us no better than they are. He stepped closer to her. You refused to sacrifice innocent humans, remember? That's why you were exiled. Don't lose that now. Serafina felt something break inside her. All her life, she had been told that mercy was weakness, that kindness got you killed, that the only way to survive was to be harder and crueler than your enemies. But here was a man who had just helped defeat 3 killers using nothing but animal medicine and courage. And he still believed in mercy. Maybe strength wasn't about being the most brutal. Maybe it was about holding on to your values when it would be easier to let them go. Okay, she said softly. We do it your way. They stayed awake until dawn, guarding their prisoners. And when the sun rose over the snowy fields, Serafina realized something had changed. She wasn't just grateful to Yao anymore. She loved him. The weeks after the attack changed everything between them. Serafina became fiercely protective. She installed wards around the clinic, ancient vampire magic that would alert her if anyone with harmful intentions approached. She trained herself back to fighting strength. She watched over Yao with an intensity that would have seemed obsessive if it came from anyone else. She also taught him to defend himself properly. Every evening after the clinic closed, they practiced in the empty barn behind the building. Basic combat, how to block, how to escape holds, how to use his environment as a weapon. "You're getting better," she admitted after one session. For a human. Yao wiped sweat from his forehead. "Thanks, I think." Spring was coming. The snow melted slowly, revealing the brown earth beneath. Farmers started preparing their fields. Life in the town returned to its normal rhythm. The fire and the cattle deaths were blamed on accidents and disease. No one suspected the truth, but Serafina knew more trouble was coming. The hunters hadn't reported back to her brother. Aldrich would send more, or he would come himself. One evening, Yao found her sitting alone in the dark clinic, staring at nothing. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. "Why do you stay with me?" She replied without looking at him. "You could have a normal life. A normal wife. Normal children. Instead, you're hiding a vampire princess and fighting off killers." "Why?" Yao sat down beside her. The moonlight through the window made her silver hair glow. "When I found you that rainy night," he said slowly, "you were the most broken creature I had ever seen. And I've seen a lot of broken creatures. But you were still fighting to survive. Even poisoned, even dying, you hadn't given up." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "I think I saw something in you that reminded me of myself. After my father died, I wanted to quit everything. Leave this town. Abandon the clinic. Start over somewhere nobody knew me. But I stayed because my father believed in helping others. Giving up would have meant betraying everything he taught me." Serafina finally looked at him. "And you think I'm like that? I think you gave up everything you knew because you refused to hurt innocent people. That's not weakness, Serafina. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard." The words hung in the air between them. In 300 years, no one had ever called her brave. Foolish, yes. Weak, soft, shameful, but never brave. "I still don't know how to be what you deserve," she whispered. "A partner, a wife, someone who knows how to love properly. Who says there's a proper way?" She didn't have an answer to that. Jeho reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool against his warmth. "I'm not asking you to be perfect," he said. "I'm not asking you to be human. I'm just asking you to stay. Not because of a debt. Not because you have nowhere else to go. Stay because you want to. Because being together makes both of us stronger than being apart." Serafina felt tears burn behind her eyes. That unfamiliar sensation she had first experienced watching the elephant documentary. It was happening again. "I don't know how to love," she said, her voice cracking. "I was raised to see emotions as weaknesses. To use people, not cherish them. Everything I know about relationships comes from manipulation and politics. Then we learn together," Yao replied simply. "I'm not exactly an expert either. I spent most of my adult life talking to animals instead of people. We can figure it out as we go. What if I hurt you? What if my world destroys everything you've built here? Then we rebuild. Or we run. Or we fight. Whatever happens, we face it together." She stared at him for a long moment. This man who should have been terrified of her, who should have thrown her out the moment he learned what she was, who had every reason to walk away and protect himself. But he stayed. He fought for her. He believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "Maybe not," he said with a small smile. "But I don't really care about deserve. I care about you. The dam broke. Serafina started crying, really crying, for the first time in over a century. All the pain she had buried for 300 years came pouring out. The loneliness of being different in a family of monsters. The guilt of the lives she had taken before she learned to value them. The terror of exile and the certainty of death. The confusion of finding kindness where she expected cruelty. Yeho held her through all of it. He didn't try to stop her tears or fix her pain. He just stayed close, offering his warmth and his presence. When she finally calmed down, her eyes were swollen and her face was a mess. She looked more human than she ever had. I must look terrible, she said with a weak laugh. You look alive, he replied. Really alive. She understood what he meant now. Feeling things, even painful things, was part of being alive. That night, she made a different kind of promise. Not a vampire oath or a political pledge. Just a simple human promise. I'll stay, she said. Not to repay you. Not because I have to. I'll stay because I want to learn what this is. What we could be. Yeho smiled. That's all I ever wanted. The next few weeks were different. They weren't just survivor and rescuer anymore. They were two people choosing each other, day by day, figuring out what that meant. Serafina learned to cook proper meals. She learned to laugh at silly jokes. She learned to enjoy small things like morning coffee and evening walks. She learned that love wasn't a grand declaration, but 1,000 tiny choices. Yeho learned patience in a new way. He learned that Seraphine's coldness wasn't cruelty, but self-protection. He learned that her bluntness wasn't rudeness, but honesty. He learned that beneath the vampire princess was a woman who had been hurt so many times she had forgotten she could feel. The townspeople noticed changes in both of them. Old Mrs. Kwan, from the grocery store, commented that Yeho seemed happier lately. Farmer Park, whose barn had burned, joked that Dr. Yoon's mysterious cousin had brought good luck to the town. They didn't know the truth. They probably never would. But they accepted Serafina into their community without question. She was just a foreign woman who helped at the vet clinic. Strange, yes. Unusual, certainly. But kind, helpful, good. For the first time in her mortal life, Serafina felt like she belonged somewhere. But her past wasn't finished with her yet. One morning, a letter arrived at the clinic. Black envelope. Blood-red seal. The crest of House Ashford. Seraphine's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sentence written in her brother's elegant script. I'm coming personally. Prepared to die. She showed the letter to Yeho. He read it carefully, then set it down on the table. How long do we have? If he sent this from the family estate. 2 weeks. Maybe less. Then we have 2 weeks to prepare. Serafina looked at him with disbelief. You're not running away? Yeho met her eyes steadily. I already told you. Whatever happens, we face it together. She had never loved him more than she did in that moment. Prince Aldrich arrived exactly 12 days after the letter. He came with an entourage of 20 vampire soldiers and servants. Their black carriages rolled into town at midnight, drawing curious looks from the few people still awake. Serafina felt his presence the moment he crossed into the town boundaries. Her blood recognized his blood. Family bonds among vampires ran deeper than any human connection. He's here, she told Yao. They were sitting in the clinic, waiting. They had prepared as much as they could. Now all that remained was the confrontation. Aldrich didn't attack immediately. That wasn't his style. He was a politician first, a warrior second. He preferred to intimidate and manipulate before resorting to violence. The next morning, he sent a messenger with an invitation. Prince Aldrich requested a meeting with his sister at the old mill outside town. Neutral ground. He promised no violence if she came peacefully. It's a trap, Serafina said. Probably, Yeho agreed. But not going is also dangerous. He might attack the town instead. She knew he was right. Aldrich would have no problem killing innocent humans to draw her out. He had done worse for less. "I'll go alone," she said. "No. Yeho, he's not like those hunters. He's a full-blooded vampire prince. He could kill you with a flick of his wrist. Then I'll die standing beside you. I'm not letting you face him alone." They argued for an hour. In the end, Serafina gave up. Yeho was the most stubborn person she had ever met. 3 centuries of experience couldn't change his mind. They went to the old mill together. Aldrich was waiting inside. He looked exactly as Serafina remembered. Tall, elegant, with pale skin and eyes as red as her own. His silver hair was longer than hers, tied back in a formal style. He wore clothes that cost more than the entire town's yearly income. His soldiers stood around the room, silent and deadly. "Sister," he said with a cold smile, "you look terrible. Living among humans has ruined you." "Brother," she replied, "you look the same, empty and cruel." Aldrich's smile didn't waver. His gaze shifted to Yeho, standing beside her. And this must be the human who dared to interfere with family business. "A veterinarian, I'm told." How quaint. Yeho didn't flinch. "Your hunters attacked my town, burned barns, killed animals. I'd say I was defending my home." Something flickered in Aldrich's eyes. Surprise, maybe. He wasn't used to humans speaking to him without fear. "You have courage," the prince admitted. "I'll give you that. Misguided courage, but courage nonetheless." He turned back to Serafina. "You know why I'm here. You embarrassed our family. You betrayed our traditions. And you killed 3 of my best hunters." "We didn't kill them," Serafina said. "We let them live." "I know. I found them wandering in the mountains, confused and ashamed. Their failure to die was almost as embarrassing as your escape." He stepped closer. His power pressed against the room like a physical weight. Even Yeho felt it, a heaviness that made breathing difficult. "Mother's mercy has limits, sister. She allowed your exile to save face. But your continued existence is an insult to House Ashford. Every day you breathe is a reminder that our family produced someone weak enough to show mercy to humans." "Showing mercy isn't weakness," Serafina said. "Refusing to murder innocents isn't betrayal. You sound like one of them now." Aldrich's voice dripped with contempt. "Living with animals has made you soft." "I was always soft. I just finally found the courage to act on it." The siblings stared at each other. 300 years of history hung between them. Shared meals at the family table. Training sessions in the castle courtyard. Political games and family rivalries. All of it had led to this moment. Aldrich raised his hand. His soldiers tensed, ready to attack. "I'm going to enjoy this," he said softly. "Wait." Yeho's voice cut through the tension. Everyone turned to look at him. "What?" Aldrich asked, amused. Yeho stepped forward. His heart was pounding so hard Serafina could hear it. But his voice was steady. "I want to speak." Aldrich laughed. "A human wants to speak at a vampire trial? This is unprecedented. Then make history. Let me say my piece. What harm could a simple veterinarian's words do to a powerful prince?" The mockery was deliberate. Serafina recognized Yeho's strategy. He was appealing to Aldrich's vanity, making him feel so superior that listening seemed harmless. It worked. Aldrich gestured dismissively. "Very well. Amuse me." Yeho took a deep breath. "You say Serafina betrayed your family. But what exactly did she do?" "She refused to kill innocent people. Teachers, farmers, mothers. People who had done nothing wrong. They were humans. Their lives don't matter. They matter to other humans. They matter to themselves. Every person she saved had a family, friends, people who would grieve if they died. Yeho's voice grew stronger. You call that betrayal. I call it courage. Aldrich's smile faded slightly. Courage? She defied centuries of tradition. Traditions built on murder aren't worth keeping. Your family gained power by sacrificing innocence. That's not strength. That's cruelty wearing a crown. The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. No one had ever spoken to Prince Aldrich this way. And what would you know about power, human? Yeho met the vampire's red eyes directly. I know that real power isn't about how many people you can kill. It's about how many people you can save. Your sister saved 7 lives that night. 7 people who are still breathing because she chose mercy. She weakened our family. Did she? Or did she prove that your family could be better than its past? Silence fell over the room. Aldrich stared at Yeho with an expression Serafina couldn't read. You're either very brave or very foolish, the prince finally said. Probably both. Aldrich circled around them slowly, thinking. His soldiers waited for his command. Let me ask you something, human. Why do you care so much about my sister? She's not your kind. She could live for thousands of years while you wither and die. What possible future do you see with her? Yeho didn't hesitate. I don't know what our future looks like. I just know I want to face it with her. However long or short it is. And if I kill you right now? What then? Then I die knowing I stood up for someone I love. That's more than most people get. The words hung in the air. Serafina felt tears threatening again. This man was facing certain death, and his only thought was about her. Aldrich studied Yeho for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed out not a cruel laugh. Not a mocking laugh. A genuine laugh of disbelief. 300 years, he said. 300 years and I've never met a human like you. He turned to his soldiers. Stand down. They obeyed immediately, confusion evident on their faces. Aldrich looked at Serafina. This human of yours. He just offered to die for you without hesitation. Do you understand how rare that is? Even among our kind, true loyalty is almost impossible to find. Serafina nodded slowly. I know. And you chose this? This simple life with this simple man? Over power and immortality and everything our family could offer? Yes. Aldrich was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. I came here to kill you, to restore family honor, to prove that House Ashford punishes weakness without exception. He paused. But maybe I'm the one who's been weak. He turned and walked toward the door. His soldiers followed, still confused at the threshold. He stopped and looked back. I won't kill you today, but I can't protect you either. Mother will send others. The family won't let this go easily. I know, Serafina said. Aldrich's eyes met Yeho's one last time. Take care of her, human. You've earned that much. Then he was gone, his soldiers following like shadows disappearing into the night. Serafina stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Yeho turned to her with a shaky smile. Well, that went better than expected. She grabbed him and held him tight, trembling with relief and fear and overwhelming love. You could have died, she whispered. Worth it, he replied, and despite everything, she believed him. Word traveled fast in vampire society. Within weeks, every noble house knew what had happened at the old mill. The failed execution, the human who dared to challenge a vampire prince. The disgraced princes who had somehow survived. Serafina and Yeho tried to return to their normal life. The clinic, the farm visits, the quiet evenings cooking together. But both knew it was only a matter of time before something else happened. The something came on a warm spring evening. Serafina sensed the presence before she saw it. A power so ancient and vast that it made Aldrich feel like a candle beside a bonfire. Her blood turned cold. What's wrong? Yeho asked, noticing her sudden stillness. My mother is here. Queen Elara of House Ashford arrived without soldiers. She came alone, walking down the main street of town like she owned it. In a way, she did. The Ashford family had holdings everywhere. This small Korean town was probably registered in some subsidiary company she'd never even noticed. She was the most beautiful woman Yeho had ever seen. Also the most terrifying. Her silver hair fell past her waist. Her red eyes seemed to pierce through everything they looked at. She moved with a grace that made everyone else seem clumsy by comparison. The townspeople stopped and stared. They didn't know what they were looking at, but they knew it was something beyond ordinary. The queen walked directly to the clinic. She didn't knock. She simply opened the door and stepped inside. Serafina stood frozen. She hadn't seen her mother since the day of her exile. The night they had stripped her of her titles and cast her out of the castle. Daughter, the queen said. Her voice was cold but not hostile. Mother. Queen Elara's gaze swept over the small clinic. The basic equipment, the animal cages, the simple furniture. Her expression gave nothing away. Then her eyes landed on Yeho. So this is the human I've heard so much about. Yeho stepped forward. His instincts told him to bow, to show submission to this impossibly powerful being. But something stopped him. He remembered what he had said to Aldrich. He believed in those words. Your Majesty, he said simply, welcome to my clinic. The queen studied him for a long moment. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified, he admitted. But being afraid doesn't help anyone. The corner of her mouth twitched. Almost a smile. I want to speak with you alone, she said to Yeho. My daughter will wait outside. No, Serafina said immediately. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of me. The queen turned to her daughter with a raised eyebrow. When did you become so bold? When I started learning what I was willing to fight for. Mother and daughter stared at each other. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Then the queen sighed softly. Very well. Both of you, sit. They sat at Yeho's small kitchen table. The queen remained standing, pacing slowly around the room. I received Aldrich's report, she began. He was supposed to execute you, Serafina. Instead, he returned home, confused and conflicted, speaking of humans who would die for love and mercy being stronger than cruelty. She paused. My oldest son has never spoken that way before. Yeho has that effect on people, Serafina said quietly. The queen's eyes fixed on Yeho. Tell me your intentions. What do you want from my daughter? Money? Immortality? Political power? Everyone wants something from House Ashford. Yeho met her gaze steadily. I want to run my clinic, help animals, maybe grow old with someone I love. Normal things. Normal things, the queen repeated. You saved a vampire princess, fought off 3 hunters, faced down a vampire prince, and you claim to want normal things? I didn't choose any of that. I just found a wounded person in the rain and helped her. Everything else followed from that. And you fell in love with her? Yes, even knowing she could outlive you by centuries? That any children you have would age differently than you? That? Loving a vampire brings endless complications. Yeho nodded. Loving anyone brings complications. At least with Serafina, I know what I'm getting into. The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to her daughter. He speaks of love. Do you feel the same? Serafina felt her heart racing. She had admitted her feelings to Yeho in private, but saying it in front of her mother was different. The queen had always taught her that love was a tool, not an emotion, but she was done living by her mother's rules. Yes, she said clearly. I love him. I didn't know I could love anyone until I met him. He taught me that kindness isn't weakness. That mercy can be stronger than cruelty. That feeling things, even painful things, is better than feeling nothing at all. The queen listened without expression. When Serafina finished, She walked to the window and looked out at the quiet town. "I have lived for over 1,000 years," she said softly. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched my children grow cold and political. I have forgotten what it feels like to hope for something beyond power." She turned back to face them. "When you refused the ritual, Seraphina, I was furious. You had endangered our family, broken sacred traditions, made us look weak before our enemies." She paused. "But a part of me was also proud, because you did something I never had the courage to do. You chose what was right over what was expected." Seraphina felt tears burning in her eyes. She had never heard her mother speak this way. "I convinced your siblings to accept exile instead of execution," the queen continued. "Not because I was merciful, because I hoped that somehow, somewhere, you would find a life worth living." Her voice softened. "It seems you have." She approached Yeho and stood before him. "You pledged your life for my daughter. You faced my son without flinching. You treated a wounded vampire with the same care you give to animals." She tilted her head, studying him. "Why? Because everyone deserves help when they're hurt," he said simply. "And because she's worth fighting for." The queen nodded slowly. "I believe you." She stepped back and addressed them both. "I am removing Seraphine's exile. She may return to vampire society if she chooses. However, she will be struck from the line of succession permanently. She can never inherit leadership of House Ashford." Seraphina let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "I never wanted to lead anyway." "I know. That's partly why you would have been good at it." A hint of sadness crossed the queen's face. "I am also placing you under formal protection. No vampire may harm you or your household without answering to me personally. This includes any unusual children you may have." Yeho's eyes widened. He hadn't even thought about children yet. "Thank you," Seraphina whispered. The queen walked toward the door. "Don't thank me. I'm not doing this out of kindness. I'm doing it because I've spent 1,000 years building an empire of cold, ruthless vampires. And I'm tired of watching my children become monsters." At the doorway, she paused and looked back at Seraphina. "Find happiness, daughter. Real happiness, not the hollow satisfaction of power. If anyone can do it, perhaps it's you." Then, softer, "I have lived 1,000 years and never met a human like him. Do not waste this chance." She walked into the night and disappeared, leaving them alone in the small clinic. Seraphina stood by the window, watching the empty street where her mother had vanished. "That was unexpected," Yeho said finally. "She's never spoken to me like that before." Seraphine's voice was thick with emotion. "I thought she hated me." Yeho came to stand beside her. "Maybe she was proud of you all along. She just didn't know how to say it." Seraphina leaned against him, drawing strength from his warmth. "It's really over," she said quietly. "I can stay, officially, without constantly looking over my shoulder. So what do you want to do?" She looked at him with eyes that had seen centuries of darkness, but were finally learning to see light. "I want to stay here, with you, forever, if you'll have me." Yeho smiled and wrapped his arms around her. "Forever sounds like a good start." 1 year had passed since the queen's visit. The seasons had changed 4 times. Summer had burned bright and hot. Autumn had painted the hills in gold and red. Winter had covered everything in white silence. And now spring was blooming again, filling the world with new life. The clinic was busier than ever. Word had spread that Dr. Yoon was the best veterinarian in the region. Farmers came from distant towns with sick animals. Pet owners drove hours for his care. He had even been offered positions at prestigious hospitals in Seoul. He turned them all down. "Why would I leave?" he said to Seraphina one evening. "Everything I want is right here." She smiled at him across the dinner table. A year ago, she couldn't smile properly. She had forgotten how. Now it came as naturally as breathing. They had married in a small ceremony attended by the townspeople. Old Mrs. Kwan from the grocery store cried happy tears. Farmer Park gave them a horse as a wedding gift. The whole town gathered in the small church and celebrated the quiet veterinarian finally finding love. No one knew the bride was a 300-year-old vampire princess. And they didn't need to know. Serafina had learned so much in the past year. She could cook proper meals now. She could make kimchi that even Mrs. Kwan praised. She could hold conversations with farmers about weather and crops. She could play with the children who visited the clinic. Without frightening them, she had become human in all the ways that mattered, but she was still vampire enough to sense the change happening inside her body. "I need to tell you something," she said one evening. Jae-ho looked up from the medical report he was reading. Something in her voice made him set it aside immediately. "What is it?" Serafina took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was the longest of her immortal life. Then Yao smiled. Not a small smile. A huge radiant smile that lit up his entire face. "Really?" "Really. About 3 months along, I think. I wasn't sure at first. Vampire pregnancies are rare and different from human ones." Yeho crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled her into his arms. He held her carefully, as if she might break. "This is amazing," he whispered into her hair. "We're going to be parents." Serafina felt relief wash through her. She had been nervous about telling him. Her original offer, all those months ago, had been about providing heirs as repayment. She worried he might think this was still transactional, but looking at his face, she saw only pure joy. "The child will be half vampire, half human," she said. "A Dhampir. They'll have some of our abilities, but will age closer to human speed. They might drink blood occasionally, but won't need it to survive. They'll be unique," Yeho said. "Just like their mother. They might face challenges. Other vampires might look down on them. Humans might fear them if they discover the truth." Yeho cupped her face in his hands. "Then we'll protect them. We'll teach them to be kind and strong. We'll show them that being different isn't a weakness." "You're not scared?" "Terrified," he admitted. "I don't know anything about raising a Dhampir. I barely know anything about raising a regular child." He laughed softly. "But I didn't know anything about treating vampires either, and I figured that out." Serafina remembered the horse medicine that had saved her life. The ridiculous, impossible coincidence that had brought her to this man's door. "We'll figure it out together," she said. "That's what we do." The months that followed were filled with preparation. Yeho read every book about pregnancy and parenting he could find. Serafina contacted ancient vampire texts about Dhampir births. They turned the spare room into a nursery, painting it soft yellow because neither wanted to assume what the baby would be. The townspeople were delighted. Mrs. Kwan started knitting baby clothes immediately. The farmers brought gifts of food and money. Everyone wanted to help the kind veterinarian and his lovely wife prepare for their first child. Summer arrived, heavy and hot. Serafina grew rounder. She moved slower. She complained constantly about the heat. Yeho thought she had never looked more beautiful. The baby came on a night in late August. It was a difficult birth. Dhampirs were stronger than human babies, even in the womb. Seraphine's vampire body helped, but it was still hours of pain and struggle. Yeho stayed beside her the entire time. He held her hand and talked to her and promised that everything would be okay. When she squeezed his hand hard enough to bruise bones, he didn't flinch. Finally, as the sun rose over the mountains, their daughter entered the world. She was tiny and perfect. Her skin was pale but warm. Her eyes, when they opened, were a deep purple, a mixture of her father's brown and her mother's red. She had a tuft of silver hair and her father's nose. Serafina held her daughter and wept, not from sadness, Not from fear. From overwhelming, impossible love. "She's beautiful," Yehel whispered, looking at his family. "She's ours," Serafina replied. They named her Yuna. It meant kind in Korean. A reminder of what had brought them together. In the days that followed, Serafina found herself thinking about her original offer. The words she had spoken when she first woke in this clinic, broken and grateful. "I cannot be a good wife, but I can give you heirs." She had been so wrong. She had thought love was transactional, a debt to be repaid. Services exchanged for services. That was how her world worked, but Yeho had shown her something different. Love wasn't about what you could provide. It was about choosing someone, day after day, even when it was hard. It was about staying when you could leave. It was about believing in someone when they couldn't believe in themselves. She had become a good wife. Not perfect. She still burned meals sometimes. She still struggled with human customs. She still had moments of vampire coldness that she couldn't control. But she was learning, growing, becoming someone she never thought she could be. And Yuna wasn't an heir. She wasn't a repayment or a transaction. She was a miracle. A tiny life born from love that neither of her parents had expected to find. One evening, a week after the birth, Serafina sat in the nursery watching Yeho cradle their daughter. He was singing a soft Korean lullaby his father had sung to him. Yuna was already asleep, her tiny fist wrapped around his finger. "You know," Yeho said quietly, "when I found you that rainy night, I thought I was just helping another wounded creature. I had no idea my life was about to change completely. Do you regret it?" He looked at her with soft eyes. "Not for a single second." Serafina rose and joined him by the crib. They stood together, looking at the daughter they had made. "I spent 300 years being told I was wrong," she said softly. "Wrong for being soft. Wrong for showing mercy. Wrong for wanting more than power and politics. And now? Now I know they were the ones who were wrong. Everything they taught me about strength was backwards. Real strength is this." She gestured at the nursery, at their daughter, at him. Choosing love over fear. Building something instead of destroying. Yeho put his arm around her. The exiled vampire princess found her happy ending. "No," she corrected him with a smile. "Not an ending. A beginning." Outside, the stars were coming out. Somewhere in the world, ancient vampire houses plotted and schemed for power. Somewhere, her siblings probably mocked her simple life. Somewhere, the crimson binding would continue, sacrificing innocence for power. But here, in this small clinic in a quiet town, a vampire princess and a human veterinarian had built something better. A home, a family, a love that transcended the boundaries between their worlds. Serafina had offered to give Yeho heirs because she thought that was all she was worth, but he had shown her that she was worth everything. And in the end, he had pledged exactly the everything and received infinitely more in return.